Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan and today we're going to be breaking down a pretty weird trade here between the New York Rangers and the Florida Panthers, and a deal that in my opinion has a lot more than meets the eye to it. Now, there was a trade just recently by Elliotte Friedman announcing that Florida and Rangers were working on a trade, and we eventually got confirmation that Vatrano was the main player in the deal. But in my opinion, there is a lot more to this trade for both the Rangers and the Panthers, but especially for the Panthers, I think this trade leads to a lot more in the future. Now, I'll explain it throughout this video, but what do I think of this Rangers and Panthers trade? What happens next for both of these teams? And in my opinion, which team wins this deal? The Panthers or the Rangers? Watch till the end for all of the trade breakdowns and make sure you hit that subscribe button. Of course, 50% of the people that are watching are not subscribed, so if you like hockey, this channel is the place to be. Now, as for the actual trade details themselves, the New York Rangers will acquire Vatrano. In exchange, the Panthers will get a 4th round pick, likely in the 2022 draft, though we don't know the exact date yet. We might when I'm editing this video, but still, a 4th round pick for Vatrano is the deal. And on the surface level, it's a pretty minimal trade. With the Rangers, they're looking to get somebody on potentially on that right side to fill in the gap for Kako until he goes into the lineup. So with Vatrano, he's an interesting one. So far this season in 49 games, he has 10 goals, 9 assists for 19 points. He's a very hot and cold player, inconsistent one, but he's only playing about 12 minutes of time on ice per game this year, which isn't the most in the world. Maybe in a bigger opportunity on a top 6 like the New York Rangers, he'd be able to have a better opportunity. And in the past, he has played up to that level, going back to 2019, where in 81 games, he got 24 goals, 15 assists for 39 points. So in a bubble, this guy can provide a lot of scoring value and a lot of finishing touch, though that hasn't quite been there over these past couple of years. But again, with a bigger opportunity on this Rangers team that can really use another forward that can score, I feel like Vatrano is a pretty solid addition, and again, isn't a guy that has much risk to him whatsoever. And the biggest reason why there isn't much risk to this deal for the New York Rangers is the term. He makes $2.5 million, but only for this year, so he'll be a rental, quote unquote, but a very solid depth scoring winger that I think the Rangers could definitely use. I felt like the biggest problem potentially on that bottom 6 for the Rangers was just the lack of scoring touch and great finishing ability. With Vatrano, he's going to be able to be a player that, when needed in those situations, can score goals and score them at a somewhat decent rate. He's not going to be the most consistent player in the world. In some games, especially with the Panthers this year, has felt invisible. But again, I feel like in a bigger opportunity with the Rangers, there could be something decent here. It's not going to be a 40-goal score or anything, but this is a player that can help in the lineup while Kako's injured, and maybe even help in the lineup before they get somebody else. Though it does feel like, again, for the Rangers, this trade deadline is not going to be as buy-filled as we initially thought. Probably no JT Miller, definitely no Claude Giroux, and it feels like on the forward side of things, Vatrano might actually be it, which would be disappointing, but again, it's kind of what this Rangers team is leaning towards. Now, the biggest reason why I think this trade is especially interesting is for the Florida Panthers, who right now are in a really sweet spot. They got $2.9 million in cap space before this deal, but now with Vatrano off the books, that frees off $2.5 million, and I discussed this in a video a couple of weeks ago about how the Panthers could be a big buyer, and Vatrano would likely be the guy dealt to get some more cap space. And for the Florida Panthers, we've seen them especially linked to Claude Giroux. Getting a big time forward like that looks to be the move for Florida right now, even though I think they could use some more upgrades on defense. There was a recent report by Pierre LeBrun saying that Colorado could still be a favorite for Giroux, but how the Florida Panthers are the favorite for Giroux right now. And if you look at the current cap situation before the Vatrano trade, they only had $2.9 million to work with, and with Giroux, he makes 8.2. Even if you put that down to 50% retained, it would still be not near enough to be able to get Giroux on the books and make that work. Until now. Now that they've traded Vatrano, yes, they would have to give him up, but you get a 4th round pick in exchange and you get some major cap space, and now for the Florida Panthers, they have 4 points, or really $5 million to work with. That is a lot more, or not $5 million, it's close to that, you know what I mean. It would be around 4.4, let's say. But for Giroux, if you put him down to 50% retained, that's $4.1 million, and for the Panthers, they would be able to make that cap work. Now with this Vatrano trade, they can pretty easily get Claude Giroux if they really wanted to, and we know the Florida Panthers have the assets for it. A first-round pick, they have top prospects, they have great depth in the system. The Flyers, simply put, have a great destination with Giroux in Florida, and I feel like for the Panthers, adding a guy like Giroux is way easier now, and even if it isn't Giroux, you still have way more cap space than you would have had already, and with Vatrano, it felt like he was already kind of out of the system. So to be able to get him up and get a 4th-round pick and not have to retain any salary is honestly a great job by Florida, and another huge W by Bill Zita. But that's what I'm saying here. When it comes to this trade, there's more than meets the eye. This is really a cap trade for the Florida Panthers, simply put. Yes, they'd like to keep Frank Vatrano, and having more depth is obviously great to have, but for this Florida team, whether it's a Claude Giroux or somebody else, they're now going to have the opportunity and the cap space to make a deal happen, which is the most important part for a Florida team that wants to be big buyers and wants to be true contenders this season. I feel like for Claude Giroux, that would be a really interesting fit to have. I don't think they need more offense on that top 6 necessarily, but with Claude Giroux and his veteran leadership, he's been to the Stanley Cup final before and has been through multiple playoffs with the Flyers. That's a type of player that would bring some added experience and some added leadership onto that team, which is never bad to have whatsoever. And I feel like for Claude Giroux especially, of course, I'd want to go to Florida. With a great team there and a great destination, it feels like, especially with Claude Giroux, who has to go off with his no-move clause, him picking Florida would not be, honestly, the worst bet in the world. But honestly, looking at this deal for both sides, I quite like it for both teams. It might be a smidge of an overpay for the New York Rangers. I feel like maybe a 5th would be more interesting for them. But at the same time, you get a depth forward who can score, who can bring some finishing touch. And for this Rangers team that doesn't seem like they're going to be big buyers and they're going to go for cheaper options to give this run somewhat of a flavor, I feel like Frank Vatrano is along the better options you could have gotten. He's been on maybe the lower side of his career, but you can turn him around and get some scoring touch out of him, which he's shown in the past to bring with new teams like the Florida Panthers. When he got there, he was way better than he was with the Bruins, so we could potentially see that same effect happen in New York, and I think he'd be a pretty solid option again until this Rangers team gets fully healthy again. And for the Florida Panthers, getting that cap space, getting that availability is the most important part this time of the year. I mean, we're 5 days away from the NHL trade deadline. It's about to happen, and the Florida Panthers are going to be one of the bigger buyers, and especially if they get Claude Giroux and even add another defenseman on top of that. I feel like for the Florida Panthers and this team right now, they have so much potential, and I feel like they know how good they can have it this year. If they get Claude Giroux, if they get somebody else, this Panthers team will be among the league leaders, I think, in cup contention, and I feel like it's just a matter of time before they win that first round and get past it, finally winning a round, and hopefully never looking back. We'll see what the Panthers do, but it's obvious they are setting up for something huge, and again, it's just a matter of time before it actually goes down. Now, we got a little bit of breaking news as I'm recording this, and I was about to end it, but Frank Sverli gives us some more details on this actual trade, and he says for the Panthers, it'll be a 2022 conditional 4th-round pick, and the condition is this. The Rangers hold 2 4th-round picks in 2022, their own and the Jets. The pick conveyed will be the lower of the 2 picks, so I'm guessing lower means the lesser pick, so it'll likely be the New York Rangers 4th instead of the Jets being exchanged to the Panthers. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Please let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this trade from a Rangers and Panthers perspective? Who do you think wins this trade? If I had to say anybody, I'd probably say the Panthers, just because it's setting up for something even bigger, and they get a 4th-round pick for that, which I feel like is the biggest thing for this deal. And on top of that, I feel like the Rangers do pretty solidly, getting a potential middle 6 score with some finishing touch. So overall, I think it's pretty solid, but let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Make sure you share this video, get it out there to anybody you guys know, any hockey fans you guys know online, and click on this card for all of my hockey trade content or right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.